Alright, baseball fans, here's an eliminating the Chicago Cubs video. It was a good year for the Cubs. They made the playoffs. They weren't expected to in this timeline. The Pirates and the Reds are both World Series participants through this timeline. Put in the same division through realignment. Remember, the Reds used to be in the National League West. So it meant that the Cardinals and the Cubs are going to have a tough time just to get into the playoffs. Cubs got there. Once they got there, they were humbled by a superior Pittsburgh team. They are 6 games better than they were a year ago. Batting average got a little bit better. Pitching staff got a little better, but nowhere near where they need to be pitching-wise. They brought up Bill Madlock. He delivered a .336 performance in his rookie card. Jim Hickman made the All-Star team. Great story there. Started the season on the bench in a platoon, then became the full-time right fielder, and he took off. Slumped a little bit at the end, tailed off to hit .331. Billy Williams, these are good numbers, but for the card itself, you expect more. Hard to imagine that, but you do. .309, but for just 4 homer and 23 RBI. You're hoping to get in the 10, 15 homer, 40, 50 RBI area. That's the rarefied air of Hank Aaron and Stargell in this season, and Billy Williams just didn't quite deliver all that, plus just 15 walks. So just had an off year, I would say, but the good news is the Williams card comes back next year. What is disappointing is Beckert. His second year in a row, he hit .342 in 71, and it just has not translated. He's only hitting .297. So he drops 40 points on the average of that card. Kessinger's okay. And Santo is fine. The bench is kind of ordinary. Now the pitching. So Fergie had to go 106 innings, 102 strikeouts, 8 complete games. That's all fantastic. A 117 whip, ERA a little high. Did not get support in his playoff start. Should have gotten a win. If he wins that game, then he gets game 5 in their playoff series against the Pirates. But his defense let him down. Hooten didn't do very well. The number 3 starter, Earl Stevenson, got bombed in the elimination game. Rick Russell was awful. In the bullpen, Lloyd Allen was signed away from the Angels and has been a fine closer for this team. He's kind of been the bright spot. So they actually have a closer, which is good news. But I don't know. A lot of these parts did not belong to the Cubs. They went outside the organization and got guys like Don Mincher. They got Earl Stevenson. They got Del Unser. And they got Jerry May. Again, Lloyd Allen. Let's take a look now at the Cubs stack and figure out who's going to be coming back next year. We're going to pull the 871 guys away here. And if the question is, was this a successful year? Heck yeah, it's a successful year. You're in the wild card round. You do have the Pirates, who won the World Series, so we know it's going to be a really difficult opponent. Okay, I get that. But it's a short series. It's a 5-game series. 7-game series, I think Pittsburgh would have a huge advantage. But the Cubs, they lost that game 1, and it didn't seem like that was just going to doom them. They're just not talented enough to hang with the Pirates that long after blowing game 1. So we're keeping the correct balance, and by correct, no overarching need for hitting or pitching. It's a blend of 7 hitters and 5 pitchers, so they can approach the draft balanced. We got a catcher. Hickman can move to first base. Fanzone can be a DH for the moment. DH catcher first. You got Santo. And you have Madlock. And that's a problem there, the log jam at third base. You got to probably put Madlock at DH, which puts, catcher, Fanzone at first, Santo at third. And you can put an outfield together of these guys. So this is a pretty potent 7 guys here, folks. This is outstanding, really. Great start. Matlock can be your DH. You got a catcher. Hundley needs help. Fun Zone can't field, but he can hit. The Carmen Fun Zone. Middle infielders need upgrading. You have Santos still at third with a great year. Billy Williams, magnificent 72 card. Look at those numbers. So I expect him to... he hit 300 with this card, but I expect more extra base hits and RBI next year. They got Dell Unser. He was actually a Philly, so it's good to steal him away. Good defense in center field. Nice little player to have. And you have Jim Hickman for another year. He gave you an all-star appearance. And believe it or not, this guy started the year on the bench against righties. And they finally said, look, you got to let this guy play every day. Look at all those home runs. He did. And he outperformed that performance. So great offense. So now let's address the pitching. Well, you got the 2 starters, Houghton and Russell, as starter 7s. But only Russell can pitch on 3 days rest. This is the Earl Stevenson card. Had a hard time in that postseason. Relief 3, starter 7. Probably better off as a reliever, though a lefty because it walks to lefties, is not great either. It's a 3.26 ERA in 80 innings for the Brewers. There's really nothing particularly special about him other than the ability to pitch 7 innings. Don Hood 4.5, and he's okay as a long man, and Ray Burris also in the bullpen. So some nice cards there, but overall it's a little bit below average from what most teams have. So I would pay more attention to revamping the pitching staff than the offense, which looks pretty darn competent. Let's see what the Cubs are going to do with those 8 guys from 1971. They have to keep, waive, or retire. All right, let's take a look at what the Cubs do with our 8 guys from 71. We begin with the great story of Glenn Beckert's 1971 All-Star season, a star-studded 71 All-Star game. Beckert was there with Joe Torre's greatest year, Stargell, Mays, McCovey, Hank Aaron. What a great 71 All-Star game, and Beckert was right in the middle of that one. 4 straight games, 342. But now he'll be approaching his age 31 season. He's got 4 more years left. He's out by 75. Must have gotten hurt. 375 average and 16 at-bats. Probably a season-ending injury here, I'm guessing. Maybe his utility player. I don't know. But anyway, he's got an all-star year coming up in 72 for the Cubs, and we're going to run that year back. Not nearly as good, but that's okay. He's an all-star for the Cubs, and he'll come back next year. Guess you could trade him, I suppose, but if they have too many keepers, they would consider trading him, I suppose, but next player, Johnny Briggs. They brought this guy in. The Cubs actually made a lot of off-season moves, and most of them panned out. Took a team that was under 500 into the playoffs. Briggs was one of those guys. He's got his Cubs hat on here. But by now, we got the wrong Briggs in there. Sorry about that. There's a couple of them. We want this one. There we go. This is the Briggs we want. So this one did not play for, this John Briggs did not play for the Cubs, but he got traded to them. So he was with the Phillies and the Brewers. But the Cubs went out and got him because they needed left-handed batters. That was the shortage. Everything was right-handed. So they went out and got lefty Don Mincher. They got lefty Johnny Briggs. They got left-handed pitcher Earl Stevenson. They went after lefties on the pitching and the hitting. This is the card we had in 71. 21 home runs and a 264, 845 OPS card. Mostly in a platoon. Doesn't hit lefties very well. So you come back in 72, do the same thing. Same OPS. Did it with the Brewers. But this is why you made the deal. You want to hold on to this guy. And look, he gets MVP votes in 73. The Brewers parted with this guy probably too soon. I guess the Brewers, they do have, your Gorman Thomases and Sixto Lezcanos and guys like that in the farm system. Bill Sharp, guys like that. But really, it was a mistake to trade this guy to the Cubs, and the Cubs are going to get some nice performance out of John Briggs. I would not let this guy go. I'm keeping him. Made the move to get him, went to the playoffs. Let's get a new card for John Briggs. All right, next up, Kessinger. He's coming back. The good news with Kessinger is consistency. Pretty much same old, year in and year out. Reliable glove, speed, on base. Could bat first or second. Has all-star appearances here. All with the Cubs through 75. The thing about consistency is you don't really... The year you choose doesn't matter that much. So if you have other guys who have only one good year out of 4, take the other guys one good year out of 4 and then just fit Kessinger around that. All-star appearances, 3 out of the 4 years in consideration. So Kessinger's coming back. They would probably go, I would go with a full year of Madlock at DH. Have Ron Santo's final year be full-time third base, and then move Madlock to third next year and let Santo go is what my choice would be. Next player is Jerry May, who's not really associated with the Cubs either. He was brought in simply to back up Randy Hundley. He played for the Pirates and also Kansas City and the Mets at the end there. Can we get this guy waivers in 72? And if we can, he's got to have a Strat-O-Matic card for the Royals. So we're going to look at the first edition set. I always play these first editions in this timeline. For Kansas City, see if they made Jerry May's card, and they did. So they made the card so we can give him waivers. He's not hitting very well anymore, so put him on waivers. And next is Don Mincher. Nice little slugger here. Mincher. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Jim Tomei for some reason. I don't know what it is there. There's Mincher. Doesn't he kind of resemble Tomei a little bit? Left-handed, stocky first baseman. Big first baseman, 6'3". He was a Senator, a Twin, an Angel, Seattle Pilot, Oakland, Washington, Texas. Possibly on the Oakland World Series roster. Maybe. This is really tricky here. He's with Oakland in 71. The Senators. The Rangers. Oakland again. Does he get a World Series ring in 72? Let's just... I've got some time here. Let's move back and see what postseason looks like. Here we go. Oh, they got a ring. Against the Big Red Machine in the World Series, he played in 3 games, got 1 plate appearance. Maybe he's a defensive replacement at first base for a bunch of first basemen. The A's had like 6 first basemen and second basemen on that team. They were kind of crazy. Anyway, 72 though. He's at the end of his rope. He really isn't worth keeping anymore. He had great 69s, 70s, and 71s. And let's take a look at those numbers. So for the Pilots, 25 homers. For the A's, 27. The Cubs took him for this year, 280 with an 812 OPS. 3 great years, really. All-star year with the Seattle Pilots. And he is the answer to a trivia question. Who was the Seattle Pilots All-Star representative? It's Don Mincher's your answer. Does he get waivers with a 72 card? It's got to be on the Rangers or A's in 72. We'll look at both. And they're right next to each other. A's, Rangers. Looking for a Don Mincher card. There it is. They gave him a card. Ugh. Almost wishing they didn't. Oh, I guess he's got all these plate appearances there, yeah. You could give him waivers. We'll give him waivers. He's not associated with the Cubs. So he goes on waivers. We have 3 pitchers, the first of which, and this is no-brainer category, Fergie Jenkins. How many Fergies are there? So Fergie, now you've got an interesting move in the timeline here. So the Rangers, there will be a deal coming up, 74. But, and then Boston, I forgot all about the 2 years in Boston before he went back to the Rangers. But the Cubs being the Cubs, gotta hold on to this guy until his time expires. Do not be tempted to deal him to the Rangers this soon. That would be foolish. He just played out the 71 card. He's got a 20-win season in 72. Pitches 271 innings in 73, though not particularly good. But look at the whip, though. Look how consistent he is. It's Fergie Jenkins. He's a Hall of Famer. Gotta exhaust his Chicago tenure. No ifs or buts about that. He's not going anywhere. So that'll immediately help this pitching staff. Now you have two more pitchers, and they're in the bullpen. First is Ray Newman. Now, he was one of those extra player cards. This is the joy in these Strat-O-Matic card sets is if you look in the extra player card sets and you find a left-handed pitching, because this league, you need lefties. Look, you've got 32 baseball teams. Each team needs 2 or 3 left-handed pitchers of their 8. So every time you get a lefty in the extra player card set, it's a bonus. And most all lefties available in the extra card set make the league. So here's his whole career. 3 years, 63 innings. 38 of those were in the season I just played. That was the card we used from 71. 1972, he's not going to make a card, and arguably he's retired. He's done. If there's a 73 Newman with Milwaukee, he could come out of retirement. But for now, we'll put him on the retired list. So we're very fortunate. I think in one of the earlier videos, we saw that Juan Pizarro pitched for the Cubs in 72 through 59 innings. Strat-O-Matic did not make his card. Ray Newman pitched 38 innings in 1971. Strat-O-Matic did make his card. So sometimes we're just using the fortune of when this card is made. Now, this is a completely different discussion if you're playing the reissues, the modern cards era, because they're going to print all these cards. They're going to give you 27 cards per team. And that changes everything. That changes the number of teams in your league. It changes the number of hitters and pitchers you use to employ here. You'd go more than 12 hitters. You'd go more than 8 pitchers if you had the full 27 guys per team, plus with multiple cards in each league. But I kind of I've dialed in my numbers specifically to these first edition card sets. And by the way, I'll just go back to this for a second. You see, back when this Strat-O-Matic sheet was made, Gary's roster page, it did separate your reprints and your originals. There has been a reissue of 72. It's just that it's not available here. And I'm going to guess on that reprint or the reissue of 72, they probably have 800 cards, I'm guessing. Between 700 and 800. Or 24 times 27 is the answer. That's going to be about 600, I guess. 648. They're going to print about at least that many. And in this set, this first edition set, there's only 576. Because you get your 20, you get 48 extra in the American League, 48 extra in the National League, that's 576, and they give you 3 extra cards. One of those is a duplicate Duke Sims in both leagues, so you can only have one Duke Sims. So it's not like you're getting extra players, unless you want a player like Duke Sims to appear twice in your league, which I'm not going to do that. All right, let's get to the last guy here, and this is Lloyd Allen. Lloyd Allen was an Angel. He actually led the league in whip, I think, in one of these years. Let's go check this out. Lloyd Allen. I think what it was is he led the available players I had in whip in the draft. Guys who were unclaimed, unprotected, is how I evaluated that at the time. But this is the year that was very valuable. Boy, the Angels had some great pitching in this era. They just didn't have any hitting. 21-year-old Lloyd Allen, 2.49 ERA in 94 innings, 122 WHIP. 72. He not only should he get waivers, should he be a keeper? So let's take a look at 72. After beyond 72, it gets kind of ugly there, doesn't it? But let's see if this 72 Angel performance exists. Going back to the American League. There he is. So he exists. Beyond waivers, I think I want to keep him. And I'm going to put, what I'll do is I'll put trade. Okay. And so there's some, let's look at the no-brainers. So Fergie and Kessinger and Beckert are 3 no-brainers. Briggs is not associated with them, nor Lloyd Allen. So you keep one, trade the other. Would be a good strategy for the Cubs. And that's good. That'll give the Cubs a trade chip. And of course, the way you trade a keeper player is to offer the keeper player with one of your guys on the active roster and improve on that player in the trade on the active roster. So that means you send Earl Stevenson and one of these guys to a team and get a better left-handed starter for a team starved for that. You know, a team starved for somebody to keep. Let's say like Earl Stevenson and Johnny Briggs for a left-handed starting pitcher who can pitch on 3 days of rest that a team might have. That'd be a tough get. You also have Hickman and Fanzone, could be trade chips. Randy Hundley, a good throwing catcher, could be a trade chip, though he is a Cub. I'm not a big fan of training Cubs guys. Del Unser, a center fielder, is a trade chip because he's not associated with the Cubs either. But it's going to be a good offseason for the Cubs. I mean, they did get to the playoffs. Can they get there again next year? You know, every year is moving on through this decade is going to be tough for this team. Madlock will win a batting title next year. Hit 354, I believe. You could bump that card up to that, or you can simply wait till Santo retires to do that. Overall, 23 teams have been eliminated to this point. And when we look at the overall numbers of keep, waivers, and retires, we're seeing we have a +5 by subtracting the accumulated number by the predicted number. We're +5 keepers, +3 waivers, and -8 retires. That's outstanding. That means that 8 guys who are on waivers will be slid over from being on waivers because they make a Strat-O-Matic card to not being very good to simply retiring them. And then 5 bonus guys who want to be kept, don't have room to be kept, they get to be moved on to waivers. So that means the waiver pool improves. Could very well be, speaking of that those Cub players who I put on the trade block, if nobody makes an offer, it means Johnny Briggs or Lloyd Allen goes on waivers. And boy, that would be a heck of a waiver pickup for somebody. Be one of the best players out there. That's it today. Behind the scenes, we're eliminating the Chicago Cubs. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you next time.